So the strategic planning, the city for many years, predating the election in 2014, set out these 5 fundamental goals. This is what we want to see ourselves down the road. A better coastal environment, or at least one that is more of an attractor than it is today. Building a great organization, which we made inroads, I think, already. Provide quality infrastructure continues to be a struggle because of the fact that a lot of our reserves that could have otherwise been used for capital is no longer available. Fostering community involvement. There was a desire, again, this goes back 3 years ago, that the council felt a need to be more inclusive, to bring people into the process. And we'll get into that a little bit more, what we've done. And then attain a sustainable future. That's the number one. We got to get our financial act together. So, can you read this in the back?
No.
This is a snapshot of the action plan. There's 32 different program initiatives, and they are separated out according to those general goals that I just spoke about on the previous slide. But they really come down to these major initiatives. Upgrading the beach. We've got a lot of, we have a hell of a lot invested at the beach, but it's aging, and it's a harsh environment. And so things like the restrooms, which we are cleaning up, but ultimately have to be replaced. And I could go on and on and on. It's our single greatest asset, and yet it also represents a large liability. So a good part of the initiatives here is dealing with that concern. Citizens advisory process. This was another one of Carmen's kind of initiatives, or one that she was championing, and that's to truly formalize a mechanism by which the community can be brought into helping the council vet out issues, to explore and help us with, for instance, the ballot measures, to get it into a condition that people would be comfortable with. That process was on track to start at the end of this month, but I suspect that that's going to have to be pushed back with Carmen's departure. Hopefully not, it'll be sooner than later. Economic development was a big part of the action plan to unturn every stone, to find a way in which we can shore up our revenue needs, and in a perfect world, to do it in a way that we wouldn't have to pick the pockets of the taxpayers anymore. That's not probably reality, but that would be the ideal goal. Pedestrian safety. We have a pedestrian safety and traffic management plan that's already underway. You see some of the improvements on Surfside Drive. They were the easiest to, kind of the low-hanging fruit to take on initially, but there's going to be more robust pedestrian improvements throughout the town over the next year and a half. And then finally, revenue generation. And that gets into some of these ballot measures that will likely have to be explored. So those are the major initiatives that we have on the table. Our challenges, again, maintaining momentum. We've got a great plan. Each of the council has been assigned areas of interest that they're kind of in charge of or to champion. But staff is always the one that really is our ability, our foundation to make these things happen. So maintaining momentum in a changing staffing environment is going to be a challenge, and certainly fulfilling expectations because the plan is ambitious and it sets some pretty lofty goals. So it's going to be a challenge to meet those expectations. But the accomplishments, we got a vision. We now have a plan, and we didn't have that previously. And staff ownership, and this is what I'm witnessing out there, are that, and these are beach improvements that, the little picture on the right was a recent improvement made to one of our kind of monumentation areas on the promenade. This was done at the initiative of the Public Works Department. They took a sense of ownership. They realized that, the council is desirous of, kind of refurbishing and repositioning our beach, and they've taken it upon themselves to do that. And so there's that sense of ownership of, and it's contagious. People, I think, feel more prideful of their community now than they did perhaps a couple of years ago. So I'm real thrilled with that progress. Unfinished business, well, we talked about the engaging of the public. We'll get there. It just may be a little longer in doing so. And then, again, the fact that we have such a skinny workforce that we have to find ways, whether it's called matrix management, where you really cross organizational lines and you blur the division between specialties within the organization so that we can take greater advantage of those resources. So that's our unfinished business. I give this a C+, not because it doesn't deserve a higher rating. It's just that we got a lot of things to do. I mean, we have an action plan, and we've got this vision. We're getting momentum with our staff on the sense of ownership, but boy, we got a lot to do. So that's the only reason I gave it a bit of a lower grade than perhaps it deserves. Engagement. This has to do with citizen involvement and outreach. First, I like to remind people, and probably most of you know this is really three cities in one. You have the Navy, which represents the lion's share, and that's in the white. You have the harbor that controls a good bit of land area, and then the area in red is really outside of the jurisdiction of those two bodies, and that's the residents of Port Hueneme. So you got this interesting mosaic of governmental entities that are each serving a specific interest. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't collaborate. And there are some opportunities out there. Some of these have been on the drawing board for a long time. On the CB base, that's the picture to the left, the golf course, in my view, is an underutilized asset, and it has financial potential that could be of benefit to this community. Very tentative, informal discussions have occurred on that, even to the extent of talking about adjusting fence lines. Will it come to fruition? That's down the road. That's that question mark future. Outleasing. There's still a lot of property on the Navy base that, and I'll tell you a little story. I'm digressing here. Is that years ago the city had proposed an RV resort on the Navy base, and the Navy was, I'm not going to say they were warm to the idea, but at least they didn't close their mind. But the next thing we know, they built an RV resort right next to the golf course. It's only available to the military. They stole our idea. And okay, so that doesn't mean that there isn't other opportunities. So, it's still on the drawing board. Bard Mansion. That's a beautiful facility that is isolated, and it isn't getting the use that it should. And I think the solution ultimately is going to have to be an adjustment in the fence line. And so that's an initiative we're going to have to pursue with the Navy, and it won't be any time soon. And then water treatment, which is kind of interesting that the Navy has some experimental technologies that they're working with that we may be able to benefit from as we ourselves are going to be struggling with water supply and treatment issues. They may figure into part of the solution. So now we go to the harbor side, and again, we have some collaborative opportunities. Market Street, it's a 3.5 acre parcel that's been vacant for 15 years, 20 years, and it seems to be ideally suited for a harbor-related use because of its proximity. But there's another piece down the way called the Beach Promenade. That's the Guion easement, and the city owns about a 3 acre parcel down there that could have a potential of a visitor-serving component that could actually include harbor-related uses as well. Office space, maybe even a World Trade Center designation. So these are two projects that are on the immediate horizon that we hope to collaborate on. And then, Harbor Days, that's what they used to call it, Harbor Days. Today it's just the Banana Festival, not just the Banana Festival. We had a festival that celebrated Hueneme Beach. Well, maybe there's an opportunity here to bring back the synergy, and that's what it was when we had Harbor Days. It was a celebration of the city and the harbor together. That may be a possibility. I think this year there's some adjustments going to be made in the location of the Banana Festival, it will spill into some of the public streets adjacent to the harbor. Maybe that's the beginning of a repositioning of this festival. Challenges. Well, we've got different missions. We have different constituencies. So that's always a challenge. Organizational detachment. What the hell does that mean? Well, there was a time when we didn't have separate commands at Magoo and Hueneme. And there was a time that they were autonomous. They didn't have the kind of oversight that they now have through San Diego. And so at one time, the local command was much more receptive to community joint efforts. Today, everything goes through San Diego, and you have a single command for both bases. So that's when I say detachment. It makes it much more problematic to work out deals. Accomplishments, we have had some informal engagement. Just yesterday, we had a meeting with the Harbor District Governmental Affairs Committee to explore some of these ideas and others. So, we're getting there, but we have a lot more work to do. One good thing that's come of our relationship is this Community Enhancement Fund, which is the result of a settlement that occurred here a couple years ago. And it provides additional funding available to the city to the mutual benefit of the agencies, that is the harbor and the city. We work together collaboratively on projects that have a shared benefit to us. So those are very positive inroads into building a relationship. Unfinished business, well, I'm going to take the fall on this one. I have not had the time to spend in really cultivating a relationship with the Navy as much as I should. Very informal discussions, but as a consequence, we're still not maximizing the assets. So that's unfinished business. That should be a council priority. And again, C is probably an unfair assessment, but because there is so much left to be done, and a lot of these ideas have been on the drawing table for years, I say, well, it's good and we're making headway, but we could do better. Outreach. This is one that I think we've really made some inroads. We have kind of a new, I'm not going to say regime, but I will say regime, in the police department. There seems to be a renewed interest in reaching out to the community. Things like the HEART program, which includes visitations to senior citizens that have no caregiver, and that's both to check on their safety, but also to cultivate a rapport, a relationship. Very important, and that's just one example. There are other, like the Explorers program and the like, that just develop more of a cohesion within the community and the city proper. Inviting dialogue. I think this is kind of a novel one, if Tom Dunn could ever get his act together on the camera. Rod, our city manager, has been kind enough to make himself available on a periodic basis, I don't know, it's once a month or twice a month, to engage in a dialogue about issues that are of interest to the community. What's happening with the community garden? What are you doing about this? What about that? And this is an opportunity to pose those questions and unscripted and getting responses back. And then this is posted on I think it's the Port Hueneme.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Port Hueneme. That's not live stream. It's just simply archiving and having it available for the public to check out. Then the last one is bringing the City Hall into your home. This is recent, just in 18 months that we now have live stream broadcasting of all of our council meetings. And again, there's archiving so that if you miss a meeting, you can always take a look at it on the city's website. So I think there's been great inroads in getting the people involved. Volunteerism. This is another really coming together that I've seen over the last year or 2 years that's so inspirational because they're helping us help ourselves. Backfilling things the city can't do anymore and selflessly giving of themselves to make that happen. So I'm really thrilled with that. We're trying to promote that and harness that enthusiasm and energy and resource to our benefit. So this is one occasion I've given this an A rating because I'm so pleased at how things are progressing. One of the things we still have yet to do is put into place a REACH program. We're actually restructuring REACH. REACH is a nonprofit entity that was set up to help primarily recreation programs. We're trying to restructure that so it'd be more of a citizen-based organization, maybe have some staff support from the city, but the city isn't the driver of the organization. And broaden its horizons to fund things like the museum, the library, an assortment of other things, not just recreation. And that's in the works. Hopeful that that'll come together in the next couple of months. So, A, give it an A.